Greetings and salutations, fellow actual Jedi. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey.
This is the Two Nerds Podcast, and today we're talking about Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm really glad I wrote that on the title card, otherwise I would have forgotten the name of the series. It's very difficult to remember. This is a bit.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you could forget that they include Kenobi.
Or Obi-Wan.
Either of those could be names. Star Wars Obi-Wan? That makes sense. Star Wars Kenobi? Oh, it's a little nice, a little prestige.
Yeah.
No, Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi. Parentheses, now he goes by Ben.
It's Ben now. I'm Ben. Stop calling me Obi-Wan. Hey, Obi-Wan, god damn it.
No one listens to me. This is the nickname I chose for myself, and it's cool.
Before we get into the actual discussion of this piece of media, I would like to remind you that there's a little ticker going across the bottom of your screen. All the stuff it talks about is cool stuff to do, especially supporting our channel through Patreon. If you do it at the $5 tier, you get episodes of Journey of Wrestling a week early. That's pretty cool. And if you do it at any tier, we will talk about how cool you are because you are. And that includes such prestigious company as Jesse Weock, the guy from Ohio, Rob, and Passion Killer 7-Eleven.
So let's talk about Obi-Wan.
Let's talk about Obi-Wan. Let's do the spoiler-free thing because I feel like almost everyone has already watched this series, but I would like to give our listener the opportunity.
I waited until it was done. Maybe you did too.
Well,
Maybe you decided to come here first.
By the time this goes up, everyone's had a weekend away from work and a Monday. So, we'll see. I don't know, maybe you guys are watching Ms. Marvel or whatever they're calling it.
I'm also going to be waiting till that's done.
So, spoiler-free review. What do you think about Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I think it's pretty good. It's not as good as the second season of The Mandalorian, which is the best Star Wars thing ever made. But it is pretty good.
I also think it is pretty good. I think it's about as good as the first season of The Mandalorian, which was a pretty good Star Wars thing. It's got some missteps, but it's nothing egregious. You and I were discussing this after I'd seen only the first 2 episodes, which I feel are very strong. And I will allow a lot more, I want to say fuckery, as a catch-all for, storytelling missteps, lore mistakes, questionable choices.
You're more forgiving of something you otherwise wouldn't be if the thing surrounding it is good.
Yes. So, I didn't like Book of Boba Fett because of that.
Whereas I like Book of Boba Fett just fine. In hindsight, some of the stuff is pretty cringe, but I liked it just fine.
I will say at the very least they fixed the lighting on this, because when you're in absolute darkness, I can still see what's happening. Even's on my TV, unlike Book of Boba Fett, half of the first episode being invisible to me. But yeah, that's overall, that's the spoiler-free review. If if you're done now, if you have to go, I understand. Mute the episode.
It delivers on the premise pretty well. It's pretty good.
It is about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yes.
Yes, it is not like the Book of Boba Fett, secretly someone else's series for part of it. It is about Obi-Wan.
It is also about the character we have established, Obi-Wan Kenobi, not Uncle Bob.
He's very upset about Book of Boba Fett.
And I will be. Even Tamura Morrison is like, I
was a little soft. It went a little soft.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's the spoiler-free review version. You got it. Mute the podcast, hit the like, do the subscribe, share it with your friends. Keep circulating those tapes. Do you people even know what a tape is anymore?
Dude, our audience is not Zoomers.
You guys are older than us.
We appreciate the following of our fellow aged folk.
You know what?
Like Mr. Kenobi.
If any of you are Zoomers, let me know in the comments.
Yeah, that would be very surprising.
Yeah.
And welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Zoomers. You're so fast.
So, You want to do episode by episode or general overview?
You like episode by episode, and this is our
content.
podcast, so... I was trying to mask that under me being polite to my friend. People like our friendship for some reason.
I like it.
Yeah, I do too. We're not the Zaibatsu. We're not secretly enemies this whole time. It's a small aside. I don't know if I've ever talked about that on the podcast. What the hell was the name of that channel? Super Best Friends or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a bunch of people who were like, oh, you should watch this. It's so great. They're such good friends. And I watched a couple episodes and I'm like, these motherfuckers hate each other. And I'm like, I don't know what friends you have, but these guys are mean to each other. Like, beyond the scope of,
Of bands.
Of bands. Of ribs. And they're like, nah, they're like the best of friends. And like 3 days later, they came out with their announcement, we actually all hate each other and we're going into our separate corners for a while, so maybe we stop hating each other. And I was like, oh, shit, that's funny and sad. Anyway, the first episode, this is one of the best first episodes of a series I've seen in a long time.
I like that they start with previously on Obi-Wan in the first episode, which is just the entire Obi-Wan Anakin part of the prequel movies.
Yeah, I like that too, actually. Just because, like
someone's watching fucking Obi-Wan and doesn't already know this.
Well, and if you don't need to. They catch you up to speed. Like, there's so much Star Wars now, and there are so many, like, say, teenagers who somehow have not watched those movies but have watched other Star Wars stuff, and they're like, who is this Obi-Wan guy? If you watch it out of order, if you don't have strict parentage or some sort of nerd shepherd to be like,
no, you watch these now.
You could stumble into this series without knowing.
It's very everyone's comic is someone's first, and that's not normally how they approach Star Wars.
Right, and I appreciate it.
Because not even Star Wars did much to introduce the concepts of Star Wars.
Well, and especially with, you and I grew up on this, so cataloging its intricacies has been part of our lives. And even still, if you guys want to go back to the podcasts we've had in the last couple of years, rewatching them, we went,
oh, wait.
Yeah, I have different feelings about this. So, for someone who is a more casual fan of this series, it is nice to have that previously on touch-up where you're like, what are the themes?
Or even if you've watched it, like, catch me up on this, so I don't forget something important.
Yeah, exactly. So that was very welcome. And that's the only reason the first episode is good. Moving on. No, I'm fully kidding. I'm always torn between the urge to do, like, a review-style point-for-point thing, but, like, if you guys watch the show. You don't need me to tell you what the show is.
Well, all right, so generally speaking, I think the first episode does an excellent job of doing two things. Introducing the stakes and setting up the current status quo.
Yes.
Like, what is an average day in the life of Ben Kenobi now? And what's going on in the galaxy, and what are the stakes of this story? Those are 3 points you really want to hit on the first comic, on the first episode. The hook. And the first episode of this series does a great job of those 3 things, and there's not a lot of fat. Like, it does those things, and that's what it has time for. And I like that they appropriately utilize their time, and they don't waste a lot of it.
I also like how well they characterize all of the principal players quickly.
Yeah, they give you they give you the rundown, the show. There's not like a freeze frame and like a narrator explaining, but the show does a good job of giving you a good snapshot of the principal people involved in the majority of the plot, and then you just sort of you're moving right along.
Yeah. There was something specific I was going to bring up, and now it has escaped my brain.
Well, we'll go back.
So yeah, it's fine. Episode 2, I also thought was very strong. I really liked the planet we went to. Dayu.
Not! Exclamation point, Narshada.
But that's the reason I liked it, is because it was so...
It's a great side of Star Wars that we see less of.
I will say also, overall with this series, and I had this thought many times, you and I sort of discovered together that my favorite parts of Star Wars are the scummy, shitty, rundown parts of Star Wars.
The parts that feel lived in. The parts that feel like they're a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Yeah, more than plotting or characterization or scripts or whatever. I prefer the original trilogy look to the prequel trilogy. Even if I might think they've got a better story, it's all shiny and bright, and I want to see the Star Wars.
If you're going to spend time going into the Star Wars universe as an audience member, as someone who's viewing this media, you'd rather spend that time in a dank Pazak den than on some fancy fucking room in Coruscant.
Exactly. And I mean, that's what bought me a lot of leeway with The Last Jedi. It wasn't quite that dirty, but they did draw on that 1970s aesthetic, sci-fi aesthetic, for a lot of their gear and characters and costumes and such. And that was very romantic to me. It was the Star Wars that felt like Star Wars and not the prequel trilogy. So I was really glad that they bridged that gap and we got more of that Mandalorian style setting, and especially on Daewoo or whatever it was.
Daewoo.
Daewoo. Mm-hmm.
Not Daewoo. That's a car, I think.
Okay, cool. I liked Kumail Nanjiani, as I do in everything he's in.
Yeah, he's excellent. When I heard his voice, I was like, oh, that's Kumail Nanjiani. Oh, this is gonna be good.
You know, that's another thing I want to say about this series is if this had actually been movies and not a series, we would have gotten some kind of bullshit comic relief that would have made things difficult to digest. And we did have a bullshit comic relief, a couple of them, Kumail being one of them, but he was handled like a living person who is kind of amusing in a world and not,
not episode...
Oopsie doopsie meets us, steal the beefs!
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Much respect to Jar Jar, just... I don't know that I want to watch you in a movie. Anything you'd like to say about episode 2?
Let's see here.
We usually use titles when we talk about these episodes, so they're not just, episode 2.
But they're just part 1, part 2, part 3, so on and so forth.
Which is fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
What if one of them was different? What if it was part 1, part 2, part 3, The Voyage to Mustafar, part 5, part 6?
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
That would be really
a mystery. Also, they don't go to Mustafar, so
no.
Really throwing me some curveballs here, Kenobi.
This is a good place to talk about it because she has the beginnings of it in the first episode, but this is where it solidifies how she reacts to adverse conditions. I really like the kid actor for Leia. She does a great job.
Yeah, she does a great job being Leia.
And also a kid.
Yeah.
She does talk a little too well for a 10-year-old, but they highlight it. There's a scene, they go out of their way to go, for Obi-Wan to look at her and go, how old are you? 10. You don't talk like a 10-year-old. Thank you. That gives them the carte blanche to write her a little bit more developed than your average 10-year-old.
It also makes sense, being as she is the daughter of a diplomat.
Yeah, it makes sense. She's the daughter of... She's a princess. She's probably very well educated. She's got a little bit of the Force sensitivity, so she's got a little bit of insight. They do that really well in the first episode when she fucking smacks down some little fucking Joffrey wannabe, and it's really good.
Yeah, that was really satisfying.
But she does the actress does a great job, and it's brings in the characterization of Leia in a way that makes it believable that this isn't who she will become. This is her when she was fucking 10 years old.
Right. And it gives you those layers of the character, who Leia presents herself to be versus who she really is, and how those two merge in the sequel trilogy to just basically become the same person.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, me too.
That's really the only other note I had for episode 2.
Yeah. Episode 3...
Now, this is where you felt the series' tone shifts a little.
I did, and not in a bad way. I don't feel as though... I think 3, 4, and 5 are weaker episodes than 1, 2, and 6. Borrowing some weird shit in 6. Not... weaker as in episodes 1, 2, and 6 are, 5-star amazing episodes, and 3, 4, and 5 are 1-star poopy shit places.
Just if you're gonna have to rank them, that's
Sure.
how you would.
Yeah, I just feel like they were less incredibly well developed and more good. Like, it's still above expectations for a Star Wars TV show after Boba Fett quietly dropped the bar down to the ground.
It wasn't a bad show. You're just salty. I'm sorry. I'm gonna fight you on that every time.
It can be two things. But it was still good action. It was still good characterization. I really like the way they handle Vader in this series overall. Kind of like a horror villain a little bit. You see him in flashes and
But it's clear that once Vader gets off his ass, shit's gonna get real.
And I do also really like the transition between Anakin at the end of the prequel trilogy to Vader at the beginning of the original trilogy. With his little quote-unquote fight with Obi-Wan here at the end, being very petty. And
Vader, this is peak Vader, this episode. He's a petty bitch. And he plays with his food in this episode.
Yes.
Because he lets Obi-Wan get away.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Small spoilers, there's a certain point where he has Obi-Wan completely at his mercy. And then clearly just lets him get away, because he's enjoying this way too much for it to end now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one could also argue that is still that small nugget of good within Anakin going, we don't get the omniscient insight like we do with Kenobi, holding back and going, this is my friend.
No, it's probably Vader is, if you were to ask him and we're able to prove that he did let Obi-Wan get away, he would explain, I was enjoying it. It's fun. His destruction will be all the sweeter for that he had hope.
Right.
But Anakin, lurking in the back of Vader's head, the little tiny fucking spark of light inside there, probably had a different reason.
Yeah. And I like that. This is the kind of nuance I'm talking about in this series. It's one of those that sometimes you watch something and the more you think about it, the less it holds up. The more I thought about this series and things that happened, the better it held up.
I actually agree. This series is one that benefits from looking back. Unlike, say, The Book of Boba Fett, which I think was fine and enjoyed, but doesn't benefit from you thinking about it after the fact, really.
It also gives you a lot of time to think about it during the fact, which is something Kenobi doesn't really do.
No, there's very, very well paced.
Yes, incredibly.
I will say this is the first time in the series that Reva shows us her special ability. She's one of the characters in the series. She's an Inquisitor. She's one of the bad guys. She can teleport. That's going to become important later.
He is being a jester, a right madcap madman.
She has, in this episode, look, later it's a different thing. I will talk about it because it's the only actual real problem I have with the series. But in this episode, she kind of has slasher movie villain powers where she somehow gets ahead of the protagonist on a single hallway.
No, there were avenues and variants. She could have used the Force better, being super well trained with it to go, where do I go? All right, sweet. So it made me go, at the time, but then the episode was over and I moved on.
It's not a huge deal.
No, it's not.
It's just, it is the first glimpse of a power she will show later. And I felt like pointing it out.
This is where we're also not introduced, but there's a lot of development on the character of Haja. Is that her name?
Haja.
Yeah.
The Imperial officer trader who is secretly working with the Underground Railroad.
I thought she was a pretty cool character, and I thought that whole railroad thing was pretty cool.
I will say that this show utilized her way better than Game of Thrones ever did. This is the lady who was with Oberyn.
Okay, yeah.
She's fucking great in this and was very mediocre in that. So that was clearly material she was given and not her as an actress, and that's really always nice to see.
It's a good thing that there was never a universe in which the people running that show were going to have a Star Wars show.
Yeah, that would have been a real fucking mistake.
Yeah. Part 4, which is episode 4.
Oh, speaking of, small thing. Part 1, 2, and 6 better than 3, 4, and 5. If I heard someone say that about the movies, I would have to ask them more because that's such a weird ranking.
Yeah. No, that is very bizarre.
You said that, I was like, imagine if someone said that about the Saga movies. I would have to be like, no, sit down. I need to know. I need reasons.
I have the nerd urge to talk about my feelings on the Saga, but we've done that. You guys can go look at it.
Moving on.
Yeah.
I just had to bring it up.
There are specific episodes. If I cared, I would put a little thumbnail and you could click it. But does anyone actually click those?
Not intentionally.
No, I don't feel like they do. Unless they're like at the end of the video. I see motherfuckers put up, you can check it out here. And I'm like, I won't.
Clearly they do, because if they didn't, they wouldn't do that.
I just don't relate. If you click on the thumbnails, let us know in the comments. And like the video. And subscribe. And give me money, please. Episode 4. This one was okay. I think this was the shorter one. Maybe it was the one before.
This is the infiltrating the fortress episode, right?
Oh, no, it is. Never mind. This one was good. There's some development for Reva, the Inquisitor lady. We had some good tension. We got to see Haja being a cool spy. And Obi-Wan doing Obi-Wan things.
Yeah, and this is also where Reva attempts to torture a child live on television. That also may become important later.
We will discuss that when it comes up. But I'm going to let you have your hot takes because, I mean, you know what? Reasonable discussion doesn't drive clicks, I guess. Ooh, hot takes. Ooh, should I put a red circle around Obi-Wan's face and be like, this will shock you. 2 friends hate each other.
Genuinely, if you put a red circle and an arrow on Obi-Wan's face, we would get more clicks, but don't do it.
I'm not gonna.
Genuinely, it would work, but please don't.
I don't. It's not the path I want to take. It's not really our content either. I don't like being clickbaity, you know?
No, I mean...
And also, if I did the red circle and arrow, I'd put it on his dick. It's not in frame, but like I would do a different title card.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
like,
fair.
What is Obi-Wan packing? How long is his lightsaber? And then like a photoshopped image of me with giant eyes gasping.
It would work.
Yeah, I would. Back to the show. I really liked... actually, this is a great point to bring this up. I love how they use color in this series. The lightsabers are the brightest fucking things in the universe, which I love, because it lights everything in this dramatic, you know, blue, red, what have you, against this darkness, and it defeats the Hollywood tendency, the filmmaking tendency, to go with orange and cyan. Because humans are orange-ish, and cyan is a natural contrast to that. So a lot of times those are the 2 colors you have.
It's good color theory.
Yes.
But this is Star Wars. We go red and blue in Star Wars land.
And in this base, this tomb, it's very green because of the water. And they really use that to strong effect.
There are some bright orange things, which are plot important, but they're like a thing.
Yeah.
That you're supposed to look at and then move on.
You're right.
I will say that I looked up the reason why that lighting looks so good. Back in the day, they just used dowels for the lightsabers, and they put all the lighting effects and everything in post.
Right.
These were like LED bars.
That's awesome.
So that is just the lighting that they produce. It's just a really deep blue LED that Obi-Wan's winging around, and
that's a great idea.
Ewan McGregor is just wobbling in front of his face. It causes a very natural fucking really blue splashback on his face and shit like that. That may be fake. But I looked it up because I thought the lighting was different and I want to know why. If that's true, fucking great idea. Do that more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that for all future Star Wars movies. Do it for the next season of The Mandalorian. Do that. Do the thing do that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how the visuals in this film popped. They did the series. They did a fantastic job of, no matter what was going on, where they were, what they were doing, they used the light and the scenery to set mood.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like that sounds like such a obvious sort of thing, but
it is very easy to fail even in otherwise really good things. Even in movies that are otherwise really good, mood is like the hardest thing to nail.
It's part of the problem I have with the prequel trilogy is everything, barring certain scenes, is brown, and everyone has glow sticks.
It's kind of a flat color palette.
Yeah, there are exceptions, but like
sometimes it's blue.
If some editor person felt like editing the prequel trilogy to have this kind of lighting, that would bring me in a lot.
It'd be very difficult to do.
Yes, ridiculously. Effects. Yeah, absolutely. It would look shitty, like some of my title cards. Did we talk about this episode at all? No, they gotta go, don't they?
Yeah, this was where we start the.
Yeah, this is part 5 we're on now.
Yeah, better version of the plot from The Last Jedi.
Yeah, basically.
Like, this is just that, but better. They just do it better. Top to bottom, left to right, it's just a better version.
Yeah, I mean, there's... The next 2 episodes do a lot of
things from specifically The Last Jedi, and they do them better than The Last Jedi.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I prefer what Luke did in The Last Jedi to what Luke does in these episodes.
Well, yeah, but like...
But hey, the journey has to... It bookends, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, it has to start somewhere.
There's not really a lot I have to say about episode 5. It was pretty good. The death scene was a little schmaltzy, but it's Star Wars.
You gotta do one.
Sure.
If all of the named good guys make it out unscathed, that doesn't feel great.
Right.
And,
another thing I did want to discuss here, and it sort of culminates in this episode. I really like Leia's respect for droids.
It's a minor character point, but it's there.
And I like how the films, as you know, time goes on, the Star Wars properties in general have made the rights of droids issue.
They have looked it in the eye.
Yes.
Whereas the prequel movies didn't really think about it too hard.
Well, and there's a couple things they do here, and I am going to get a little bit into Part 6 territory as I talk about this, that, like, gave better context to shit in the films, and that wasn't there before. You know, George Lucas makes A New Hope in 1977. So, you know, these droids, they seem like sentient people. Well, they're just robots who help us out. That's fine. We accept that. You don't think about it really back then. You don't. It's just how fiction works. Oh, Luke Skywalker, this teenage farm boy, is obsessed with the weird old wizard man who lives down the road. Yeah, that's fine. It's just Doc Brown, but in space. Vice versa, but you know what I mean.
It's all tracks.
Yeah, this is just what you do. You do get obsessed with the weird old wizard man down the road.
To be fair, if I grew up on a terrible, shitty farm in the middle of nowhere and there was a cool old wizard guy... spoiler alert, half of that was true. I didn't have a cool old wizard guy.
I was about to say, I'm sorry about your lack of old wizard guy.
If there had been a cool old wizard, me and that old wizard would have been pals.
But this show, you know, analyzes a lot of those concepts, and I think the loader droid, whose name I forget off the top of my head because it was just a series of numbers and letters.
And it wasn't like a fun, cool backronym to like a regular word, like all other droids.
He can't talk. Why would he need to talk?
Why would they give the forklift a vocalator? Why would they give the forklift the ability to back talk them?
Yeah, and just everything that you can think about from that fixing point. Good and ill.
Yeah.
Logical and illogical.
Because, like, the 70s movies, they didn't engage. This wasn't a thing that was even considered. The prequel movies didn't really think about it too hard. But all of the newer Star Wars content has looked in the eye the droid issue. And I like that. I like that because it's something genuine to grapple with in the Star Wars universe, because basically every single person in the Star Wars universe has this unthinking, unearned superiority complex over droids because it's so baked into their society. And I like the stuff that gets to grips with that. Like, there's in this, I think it's like actually a couple episodes earlier, but in this series, the loader droid who can't talk, he gets, like, he literally can't talk, and there's a scene where he just quietly grips a hammer, and it's like, you feel that moment.
Yeah. That
feels real, and I love it. It makes what happens at the end of that particular character arc all the more, like, impactful.
Yeah, and they do this in The Mandalorian. They did this in Solo, which is still probably my favorite Star Wars movie.
They do it real well in Solo.
They do.
And they do it incredibly in Rogue One.
Yeah. It's all... I love this storytelling aspect because I come from, experiences where in some of the early Star Wars RPG games, they were like, well, you can't play a droid because that's not a real person. What would the stats would they have? And to this now, like, it's so fucking interesting. It gives you more ground to tell stories. And in that sense as well, they show us some stuff with Luke. I'll describe this briefly and we can move on to part 6 proper, where he is introduced to Obi-Wan as a cool guy who gives him a cool toy.
Like, that's the first interaction he has with Obi-Wan.
So, of course, he's very interested in the nice old wizard man who gave him a cool toy.
Yeah, he's the old wizard who lives out by Beggar's Canyon.
He's Santa Claus, probably.
Like, yeah, of course he likes him. I like that they established that.
Yeah, it's nice.
And a lot of the series has... this is probably better for the conclusion for episode 6, so I'll wait. But I do want to...
And let's get into episode 6. Let's go ahead and do that. And let's start with your frustration, because that's what it starts with.
Yeah, so fucking Reva can teleport. Look. I recognize that having characters sit on a ship for 10 minutes of screen time, like A New Hope, isn't the most dramatic thing to have happen.
Well, and if I may, I would like to add in there that the logic of wrestling feuds kind of applies in this situation. On Monday, The Undertaker wrongs Kurt Angle. And then Kurt Angle waits
until
7
Friday,
days and goes to Undertaker, still mad as hell, and says, hey, last week. So even if you don't have the sound of air circulating and Obi-Wan sitting at a console going,
just imply a time skip.
Implying that time skip, you're losing energy.
I get it, but also you're maintaining the integrity of the fictional universe,
right,
wherein there are spaceships and wizards with fucking laser swords. So your suspension of disbelief is already bearing a mighty load here. It's already like Atlas holding a whole world up. You gotta maintain the integrity where you can, and hyperdrive takes time. Reva, at the end of part 5, avoiding spoilers, gets got. She ends up with a lightsaber in her stomach. That's bad for you.
Especially if you're a Sith. We've established that.
Yeah, that is literally one of their weak points.
Yes.
Right in the tum-tum. So she is crawling and can't stand and grips her lightsaber like, I will have my vengeance. And then at the beginning of the next episode, she is on a different planet in a different system, walking around asking people questions. And it's not like a time skip happened. Explicitly, a time skip did not happen.
I feel like maybe specifically the beginning of that episode might be a little out of order from the timeline.
But it can't be.
Yeah, but and then Ben gets there later, and it doesn't take him long. So
no, and maybe that particular planet and Tatooine are really close, but based on the things that happen, it can't have been more than 10 minutes.
And as much as I'm playing devil's advocate here, don't get me wrong, it took me out of things pretty severely as well.
For her to recover enough to stand up, find a ship with a hyperdrive, leave after basically making it so that anyone she runs into on that planet is going to want to kill her, regardless of who they're aligned with. So commandeer a vessel of some type, probably kill the people who were in charge of it, leave, arrive on Tatooine, get to town, ask a guy questions. There is in the timeline a maximum window of 10 fucking minutes for that to have happened. It is impossible. It doesn't work. Now, does it ruin the whole series? No. Any more than the Iron Fleet learning how to teleport in late season Game of Thrones is what ruined that. That show had a lot of other problems. But it just pulled me all the way out of the narrative, and I had to spend half that episode getting back. And I resent that. Because it is such an easy problem to fix.
I agree. It was frustrating. I think the series as a whole is good enough that it's allowed to have a mistake of that magnitude. But man, how much nicer would it have been if I was able to smoothly transition from part 5 to part 6?
Because it's actually, because what I would prefer you have done is take the Reva stuff and put it after the final confrontation with Vader. You can do it all at once instead of cutting back and forth. I know how much Star Wars loves to do that, but just focus on the Vader stuff, then do the Reva stuff. It works just fine. The emotional beats are all the same, and you have time to do that in. What you could instead do, which is literally a line of dialogue, is imply a time skip between episode 5 and episode 6. Imply, man, they've been chasing us for hours now. That's all it needs.
Or even, as they did with Mustafar, as I mentioned, there's a throwaway line where they're like, oh, they're in the Mustafar system. That's Vader's system. We don't need to know that. Nobody needs to know that. It's not important. But
I'll devil's advocate for that. There are some people who aren't Star Wars nerds. The same people who need the recap at the beginning don't know what the lava planet's name is.
I don't know that it was important to the plot. I don't know that being Vader's
the
system...
The implied threat of Vader might show up.
I guess, but he's there. He's nearby. He's in the episode. That's all you need. Oh, Vader's off. He went to Coruscant to buy cookies is more of an important distinction that Vader's not a threat at this point.
I'm not willing to barrack too hard for that line, but I can see...
I don't hate it or anything, but it's it takes 3 seconds, and it wasn't very important. In the same sense, they could have gone, oh, we're quite close to Tatooine.
Oh, or just, when you don't actually need to say that, because when Obi-Wan leaves, he gets to Tatooine in 10 minutes.
Sure.
Less. So, clearly, they show, don't tell, that it's close to Tatooine.
Right, but, it would have been nice for people who have not memorized the Star Wars map, especially if you're introducing new planets. I don't know that they did, but if they did.
Oh, lots, yeah.
There's actually a scene where you could do it. Obi-Wan's talking to the guy who's driving the ship full of refugees, and he's like,
we're not going to make it to insert planet they're going to. Could we get to Tatooine? It's nearby.
The guy we could make a joke out of it. The guy could go, we could stop at Tatooine, and
Obi-Wan would no.
We're not going to Tatooine.
That's a bad idea.
So, this could have been so easily band-aided.
Honestly, one line of dialogue. There's even a scene where it goes. The hyperdrive is shot. Our parts aren't good. They've been chasing us for hours now. They've been chasing us for an hour. An hour is all you need for this timeline to make sense, but it is just not there. It's just not there.
And this is perhaps another one of those things that might not be so frustrating if we had watched it as it was released. But there's a lot else about this series that would have been frustrating if we watched it as it was released, that I'm glad we both binged it.
Yeah, because if we watched it as it was released, in real life a week would have passed.
Yes.
So that would have allowed it to feel like time had passed.
Right.
Even though in what is happening in the universe in sequence, it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
And for all I know, that's supposed to be there. Maybe the beginning of episode 6 does take place a couple hours after the end of episode 5, and they have been chasing them for a while. They don't do a good job of setting that up if it's the case.
And it is ultimately minor.
It's an incredibly minor nitpick, but it pulled me all the way out of the narrative.
Right. It did have an impact. And, I try to give the benefit of the doubt and the suspension of disbelief and all right, it's fine. What do you got? And this is really the only time that it really fucked with me.
And in six episodes, this is the only real complaint I have.
Yeah.
And the rest of this episode, now that I'm done bitching and I have it off my chest, is so fucking good, I don't actually care that much.
Yeah. One of the best lightsaber fights in the series.
I love it. It's an amazing bridge between the very, perfect martial arts master forms lightsaber fight of episode 6, where these are two Jedi at the peak of their powers, clashing with, fucking precog powers and lightsabers and force powers across a whole planet, and the two old men who don't want to break a hip from A New Hope. This is a bridge point to that.
Yeah.
And it works really well.
It does. And it's nice, all the times Darth Vader has fought in this, in Obi-Wan, are really great Darth Vader fights. He moves like a robot Frankenstein, and
you can feel his overwhelming power in the Force and physical might.
Yes. It's all really incredible. There are things I do want to mention as well. I've seen a lot of frustrations online about certain lines in the original trilogy that were bent or invalidated, depending on your point of view.
Like what? I don't, this is a genuine question.
The people bitched a lot about last time we fought. I was but the learner, now I am the master.
No, Obi-Wan hands him his shit in their fight. Like, that still works.
Yeah.
Like, he fucking pushes his shit in and leaves him on his knees. He won. It still works. It works better, actually.
I know.
They bridge the character arc of calling him Anakin and treating him like a brother, and then referring to him as fucking Darth like a psychopath in Episode 4. That's not even what you call him. That's a title. His name is Vader. You weirdo. Like, it's a wonderful bridge. It makes that scene better and make more sense.
I agree. Precog that you are. We were talking about this before you watched any of the show, and I'd seen 2 episodes. And you have not had any spoilers about the show.
No,
right?
I've very much tried to avoid them. Like, I've ducked every Star Wars mention since this show started.
And you said to me, boy, I sure hope they don't do the 2 things that they did.
Because the show doesn't work like, Star Wars, the series doesn't work. It makes the characters make no sense if they do these 2 things. And I was wrong. They did them just fine. They managed to pull them off.
They did. And they did it with such simple, basically throwaway lines. Just putting that out there. And it kind of made it fun and like, weirdly realistic.
As for instance, obviously nothing can happen to Luke, because the important part of Luke's character arc is that nothing fucking happened to him before A New Hope. He was a farm boy who nothing interesting had ever happened to. They throw in like 2 throwaway lines and knock him on the head movie style, so he's not awake for most of the final confrontation at his farm. So he just remembers this as a weird Tusken Raider attack. So like, it works.
And that's exactly the kind of thing that you as an adult would be sitting around having drinks with your uncle, and you're like, man, remember when those Tusken Raiders attacked that one time? And he's like, oh no, that was a Sith Lord. Yeah.
We didn't tell you because we thought you'd shit your pants.
Yeah,
drink. But and then the other thing I didn't want them to do was have Obi-Wan and Leia interact a lot, because her speech, help me Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, only really makes sense if she's never met him. Because she says things like, General Kenobi, you fought for my father in the you fought with my father in the Clone Wars. Whereas if she'd met him and they had a very personal experience, it would be, hey, Ben, I need your help. And, I mean, there's a little bit of that, because they did have a very personal experience in Bond, and she's very informal with him, so it would make a little more sense if she was informal, but at the same time, this is an official communication from the Princess of Alderaan, and she doesn't know if this communication is going to be intercepted. And there's a line in the last episode where Obi-Wan looks at her and says, no one can really know we know each other because it would be very dangerous if people did. And that's enough of a fucking fig leaf that it hangs together.
I also feel like it plays very well with what they did with Leia in Rogue One.
Yeah, it does. Because it, much like Leia's actions in Rogue One make her actions in A New Hope, it casts them in a new light. It changes her from someone who's trying to get away with something, like, no, I'm definitely, this is a diplomatic vessel, I don't know what you're talking about, to someone who is throwing their defiance in their oppressor's face with a smirk. Nah, this is a diplomatic vessel, I don't know what you're talking about, you can't prove nothing.
So the speech still changes a little bit, but it's more like, hey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, General, who my dad knows.
That's why I'm calling you. That's the only reason we might have to talk.
Anyway, you are my only hope, wink, wink.
And I like it. It works with the new sassier Leia.
Which I think is, in Carrie Fisher's legacy, deserves.
Fits with the rest of Leia anyway.
Yeah, it does. Is there anything else you want to discuss before we close this off?
I really like the end of Reva's character arc.
I do too. Oh yeah, we did touch on that.
This is hard sell having a person almost torture a child on screen and then asking me to be sympathetic with them later. But I mean, you do it with Anakin, so like, and Anakin murdered like a fucking bunch of kids.
I just think like. She's a complicated character. Anakin's a complicated character. I don't think he ever is really the good guy or the bad guy. He's a guy.
I mean, the child murder's a pretty bad guy thing to do.
Well, okay. I mean, I don't know. Maybe those kids were assholes. You don't know. No, I am kidding. He's a complicated man who is weighed upon by the magical energy of the universe explicitly.
He's a tragic figure.
He is.
And Reva is a tragic figure.
Yes.
And it works. It's bold of them to have her attempt to torture not just a child, but literally Princess Leia, and then a couple episodes later have us try and make us sad for this person who, a bad thing happened to them once, so they should definitely murder innocent children about it. But you literally did do that with Anakin.
And they do it with Luke as well. And I think this does a great job to portray how much those who are Force sensitive can be swayed by that darkness more than your average person. It doesn't take Owen any amount of consideration to do the right thing when he is full of hate.
He does not like Obi-Wan. But when he could easily get out of a shitty situation by selling Obi-Wan out, who is right over there, nope, doesn't even cross his mind.
But for a lot of people, for Luke Skywalker, who a lot of people see as one of the best guys in the universe, he gets scared and immediately his thoughts turn to murder as the answer.
Because the Force is a real thing in the Star Wars universe, and the dark side genuinely always seeks to corrupt and twist and poison any connection or feelings you might have, which is why the old Republic Jedi became weird fucking psychopaths who tried to shun all emotion. It doesn't work, and it causes problems like we see.
But it expands the universe, and it shows us these things happening to people who aren't Skywalkers.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yes.
Another thing I really like is Obi-Wan. There's a scene in episode 5, I think it is. Or maybe episode 6. I can't quite remember. Obi-Wan is in a bad situation. He's covered in a bunch of rocks. And he seeks inside and finds the strength to get loose and carry on and go towards victory. And it's not the rigid, dogmatic, old school Jedi temple way of doing things, of finding your center and shunning all emotion. It is his connection, the way he cares about his best friend's kids and wants to help and save them from the danger they are in. That emotion is what gives him the strength to carry forward, which helps bridge to the Obi-Wan of A New Hope, who clearly doesn't give one solitary fuck about the old rules anymore.
I really like the way the midpoint pivot on that is when he and Leia are in the back of that mole rat guy's car, and he's talking about, when I was young, the Jedi kidnapped me and spirited me away, and I don't remember anything about my family. That was pretty cool. Maybe that wasn't pretty cool.
Oh shit, maybe that was a fucked up thing to do.
Oh man, maybe I have trauma.
And then at the end of the series, after that, he looks at Luke, where at the beginning of the series, he was still in his head, the old Jedi of, no, when he starts to show powers, I have to take him and train him as a Jedi. And at the end of the series, he's like, no, he needs to be a kid. He needs to be a normal kid. He's refusing to continue the cycle of abuse. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that characterization.
Yeah.
That's all I had to say.
I liked the series a lot. It was everything I wanted from Star Wars when they announced there were going to be new movies. Thank you for giving it to me. And The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian Season 2, and The Mandalorian parts of Book of Boba Fett, not the parts in the big fight, those were kind of dumb, but like the other episodes that were just about Mando, very good. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next thing. I'm glad that as much as this titanic monolith of all-consuming media is probably the bad guy, at least they're giving us bread and circuses.
Everything's better when nerds talk about it.